welcome. This is part 2 of Cycles of the Womb, and today we're going to be talking about the Maiden and the first quarter. But first, before I go into that, I wanted to share with you something really interesting that's happening to me in my cycle at the moment. It's really fascinating because last week when I presented my first video, I said I bleed with the new moon, and the new moon came and there was no blood. So it was like, okay, that's really interesting, because I've been cycling with the new moon for a little while now. And so it took me to, I have a journal, like a diary, and I remembered about 6 months ago in my diary I had a 48-day cycle, and that cycle was, I ended up bleeding on the day of the Scorpio full moon. And so I'd not bled on the full moon before, so then I cycled with the full moon for a few months, and then I moved back again to the new moon. And then I realised that the new moon last week was in Scorpio, so there's some kind of correlation for me in Scorpio, that every time the moon is in Scorpio my cycle changes in some way, and Scorpio being this real sign of transformation and death and rebirth. So it's kind of interesting. So I've also found that by tuning into my womb, so placing my hands on my womb and asking her, is everything all right? What's happening? Are we pregnant? Are we, what's going on? And she says, I'm just recalibrating. And when I think back to the full moon in Scorpio, when she was realigning then, a lot of the stuff that I was letting go of when I was bleeding was to do with the past and ex-partners and trauma and things that had happened to me, shame and guilt. And I feel like every time we bleed, we're really shedding all of that. So depending astrologically when you bleed, it can be connected to how that is in your astrological chart as well. For me, Scorpio seems to have this kind of real, so now the new moon has come around in Scorpio, and it's like, okay, now I didn't bleed, so it's like, obviously I'm re-shifting again into something new, a new cycle. And there's real power in that. There's real wisdom in listening to the womb and what she's saying, and trusting her, knowing that what she's realigning to is what we need to clear. And a beautiful story about when I came back to the UK from New Zealand was that as the plane began to descend, started coming down, I started to bleed, and my blood wasn't due yet. And my mum, who was on her way to the airport with my dad, she started to bleed around the same time, and she wasn't meant to bleed yet either. So it's like our wounds had connected and bled as I descended into the country. So amazing. It just really shows the power of the womb, and then we did a beautiful ceremony together to celebrate this, and we offered our blood to the apple tree in the garden. It's really special. So I often feel like sometimes we try to fit our cycle into a normal pattern of how it should be, and she doesn't work like that. Especially it feels like the more I try to control her, the more she kind of rebels. So I'm also learning that because my moon and Venus are in Aquarius, which is quite a rebellious place, and the moon is in Aquarius today as well, so rebel. So it's really interesting to witness the changes in myself and to trust that she knows exactly what she's doing, like so deeply. And I have a feeling that I might start bleeding on the next full moon, which is in Gemini. And in my astrological chart I have Chiron in Gemini, so my wounded healer is there. So I might have some stuff to release to do with that. So yeah, I'm just keeping an open mind, an open womb. Say, okay love, do what you need to do. So coming back to the Maiden, and yeah, I still feel like even though in my cycle I'm not in this place right now, it's still important. There will be a lot of you who bled at the new moon who really are coming into your maidenhood now. So the Maiden for me really begins after the blood has finished completely, and it's that next day, and it's this feeling of real freshness, real clarity, purity, just this feeling of lightness and also playfulness. So I can feel when I'm shifting into my Maiden, I want to go out and play a lot. So I want to go on adventures and go climbing up mountains. I'm quite dynamic. I want to be, you know, working out, getting strong, doing yoga, dancing. All of these things is to help her grow. So I see the Maiden as like, she's a beautiful shoot just coming out of the soil. So the blood is like the winter, it's like the composting and everything's breaking down. And then the Maiden, she's new life again. So she's that energy of, you know, she's bursting out from the soil. And she's transformed and she's let go of all of the things that she needed to break down and let go of. And she's integrated them. And so in this going in this time of menstruation, in this time of real reflection and inner wisdom, so she really comes in. Then when she comes out as her Maiden, she knows exactly what her focus is, because she's come inward enough to know what her values are and what she's working on right now in this cycle. So she can, when she's bleeding, really tune into, well, what am I moving into now, you know? So it's like, when you come out of the cave, it's like you have this energy that is like, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing. And she can be quite determined. She can be like, right, I'm going to start new projects, I'm going to go and meet new people, I'm going to circulate, I'm going to network, I'm going to get out there in the world, I'm going to start to really make my dreams come true, I'm going to climb the mountain. So the Maiden is like this ascending feeling. And so I find when I'm in my Maiden that I like to wear really quite playful colours. I'll tend to wear more like pinks and oranges and bright colours, you know. I really can tend to be more out there. Like, you see like this flower that's coming up and out, you know. So she's just like, it's like, wow, it's really expansive energy at this time. So what does she need? You know, how do we nourish her? She needs to be fed, right? So if you look at it as a plant that's just come out from the soil, it needs attention, it needs love, feeding, watering, anything that's going to help her to grow, you know. So lots of sunlight, so getting out in nature, getting fresh air, and eating foods that really nourish. So lots of greens and juices and loads of water, and she will then be able to grow so much more if we have this awareness of, yes, I'm in my Maiden and I'm actually have lots of energy. So if we can use this time wisely, we know that this is the ascending energy, so this is probably the best time to start getting things done, you know, like to, if you wanted to start a new project, start it, you know, put things in action of what we need to begin, you know. You might want to start writing lists, start writing things down, and then taking steps to really start making things happen. It's definitely an exciting time. It can feel like a time of endless potential, you know. So it's, yeah, it's beautiful. What else does she need? I think to really invite that playfulness and allow yourselves to be young. So allow ourselves to be silly and play games and do handstands and tickle each other and just, you know, really being playful and kind of seeing life with that curiosity of a young child again. I often find that when I'm in my Maiden that I can do a lot more physical exercise. So, for example, I can do quite a dynamic yoga flow and then go for a walk and then go shopping and then and it doesn't seem to knock me at all because I'm in this stage of expansion and coming out. So yeah, if you really want to build up your fitness, this is a real time to kind of really push your levels of how much can I, you know, what can I do, and testing ourselves, becoming stronger, like, you know, really working the muscles and yeah, because she loves that, you know, and she wants to find out who she is as well. So she's like, wants to push her boundaries a bit and see like how high can I climb. And yeah, it's a very independent time, it feels as well to me. It's like, because when we get to the top of the hill next week, we're in our mother and everything's more kind of, we meet people and we're connecting and we're loving and we're doing all of these things. But the Maiden is kind of like, well, I'm coming up and out, but it's like, it's more of a solitude journey until we get to the top. And often, yeah, like I find for me, I can just be in my zone, just working towards things that I love, obviously, you know, like just getting things done and kind of like, right, what do I need to do this cycle, start moving stuff and moving my body and just getting the energy moving, because then by the time I get to the top of the mountain and I see everything coming into fullness, it's like, ah, yes, and all that work that I'd put in my Maiden comes to fullness and it's like, yeah. It's like, wow, it's a really beautiful time. And you see like the moon is in its first quarter today, so that's like the energy is building, it's halfway there, and then next week she'll be all the way up to full moon. So it's like the energy is building, it's getting more and more each day, we're getting more energy. And the full moon next week is going to be in Gemini, so this is all about communication and networking and yeah, building webs and connections where we are kind of all doing this community thing, which is really, really cool. Especially at the moment we're in Aquarius, so it's like we're building this energy of community and we can feel it rising. It's such a powerful time, it really is. So I'm just going to feel into if there's anything else I need to say about the Maiden. Juiciness. So there's a point for me with my yoni after I have been bleeding and I come into my Maiden and things start to change down here, and then it's not until I come into ovulation that things start to get really juicy and there's a lot more lubricant down there. But at this time it can be quite light and quite creamy, so it's quite normal and not to worry about this. It's just a shift in your vagina, change in your vagina. So it's and you can also be at this time, you could be quite curious with your sexuality, curious about, you know, who you'd like to meet at the top of the mountain, because that's where we're heading, right? So yeah, it's a time of excitement building and that kind of arousal building inside of us. So we're feeling like we have all this creative energy, so it's building, and just feeling it build can be really powerful, and not like trying to change it or shame it or say this or that, but just like feeling the energy building in us, in our sexuality, and feeling ourselves getting ready to connect with the others. It's a really beautiful time. She loves to giggle as well. Yeah. So I think that's all from me today about the maiden. May your maiden shine. May she have lots of fun. May she climb the mountain and do lots of yoga and dancing and playing. May you put on your favourite tutu and sparkly eyeshadow. May you love her, be her best friend. Because she needs you. She needs to grow. So yeah. And next week we'll come into talking about ovulation and the full moon and that mother energy. And I'll let you know if I'm bleeding then as well. We shall see. Okay, my loves. I love you so much. Blessed be.